Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Module 5. This is the second last module before the course is done. So it's definitely gone by fast, but I do hope you're getting a lot out of it. There's two things I want to highlight before we get into today's module. One is that I was given some feedback about how the last module was a big jump from the first three, and I guess I didn't highlight that nearly enough, where the first three modules were very practical, all about your calendar, how to crush your day planner. This module, the last one and the sixth one, they're really about mindset and the psychology of goal setting and how to be more efficient, how to overcome things that hold us back, like procrastination, we'll be talking a lot about today. And so I didn't make that clear enough is what it comes down to. The first three modules were much more practical. Modules 4, 5, and 6 were more on the mindset psychology part. So that's where we're diving into. In the next course, I'll definitely make that distinction a lot clearer. As somebody pointed out, the first three modules felt very practical, and this is a lot more long-term, futuristic, more applicable into the future. The second thing that I got as feedback was that I didn't give you as many exercises, and that it'd be nice to have some kind of exercise around these mindsets. So on this module, I have done that. We're going to be looking at procrastination, we're going to be looking at fear, we're going to be looking at different things. And so I've created more exercises for you to really be able to implement what it is that we're going to be learning today. So let's get into this. Will be probably one of the longer modules that has the most slides out of all of them so far. So you can only imagine it's going to be on the longer side compared to the modules. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. So module 5, it's on motivation momentum, increasing our odds of success. Because really what we want to do is increase the likelihood that you succeed with your goals and give you all the tools possible to make it happen for you. So part 1 is going to be understanding the procrastination equation. And then part 2 is going to be motivation momentum. How do we combat the procrastination equation? Once we know what we're up against, how do we defeat it? So in the procrastination equation, there's a great quote, and it says, "We like to think of champions and idols as superheroes who are born different from us. We don't like to think of them as relatively ordinary people who made themselves extraordinary." And this is from actually a book, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And really that's what we're talking about is mindset. Is every human being is the exact same. We're born basically identical. And what really separates us is our mindset, is how we think and how we're able to achieve. And that's really what I want to get into more today, is what makes people that are ordinary, extraordinary, and how to overcome that. Because it's really all in here. We are our own worst critics, our own worst demons. And so we really need to be able to overcome that and shift through it. So we're going to start off by talking about the procrastination equation. We talked a bit about it in the last module, module 3. And so we're really going to dive into it. I gave it to you lightly, but we're going to deconstruct the procrastination equation today, as it's had a big impact on me, and it'll really help you understand how motivated you are to achieve your goals or why you're not motivated. So there's 4 variables to the procrastination equation. There's expectancy, there's value, there's delay, and there's impulsiveness. So I'm going to explain each and every one of those, and by the end of this part, you'll definitely have a better understanding of what these all mean and how this all impacts your motivation. So expectancy. This is the likelihood of your goal working out for you. So the goal that you have right now, let's just say you want to become a public speaker, the likelihood of that actually happening for you is going to drive how much effort you put into it. If you feel like it's attainable, you're going to put more effort into it. If you feel it's unattainable, you're going to be less motivated to do it. So the more you believe that it's likely to happen for you, the more likely you are to put energy into it. Value. This is how much value the goal is going to bring you. If you're shifting careers and becoming a public speaker is a key thing for you, then it's going to bring a lot of value to you. And so that's something that you're going to put in a lot of energy. But if the goal doesn't have a lot of personal value to you, we're not going to be that motivated to achieve it. Impulsiveness. So we've talked about impulsiveness a fair bit already. And this is basically how easily we get distracted and taken away from things. So we've talked a lot about this with our cell phones, email notifications, things that disrupt us from being able to really focus and concentrate. We really talked about this with deep work and Cal Newport, and how if we have all these things going on at once, we're bombarded with different things, we're just not going to be able to get the work done that we need to. And so impulsiveness is a key component of the procrastination equation, because that's what pulls us away from the task at hand, and it zaps our motivation. And so this actually has the highest correlation to procrastination, giving in to intense carvings or cravings, and just being able to give up on the tasks that we're working on is highly correlated to procrastination. And the last variable is delay, and that's basically how long out in the future we're going to get gratification for the goal that we're working on. So, and we've talked a bit about this as well, where anything over 90 days is a vision, anything under 90 days is a project. And so the shorter term it is, the more we get gratification for it. And that's why I've been big on breaking your goals down into daily things, because then we're seeing some kind of progress and immediate gratification each and every day. If our goal is 3 weeks off in the future, there's going to be so many other things that come up before that that will give us gratification that we'll want to do, because that's going to give us more of a reward than something that's going to happen 3 weeks down the road from now. So when we combine all these together, expectancy times value, and then you divide that by impulsiveness delay, that gives you your motivation. So there's two positive factors on motivation, and that's expectancy and value. And the two negative ones that pull us away are impulsiveness and delay. And this gives us motivation. That's what the M stands for. And so let's look at this a little bit deeper. I'm going to give you a scenario so you understand it a little bit better. So let's say you have a work deadline, and it's for a new budget, and this could lead to a promotion for you. And this, I'm just going to move my camera up here. And it's Tuesday evening, and you're at the office, and some colleagues text you from work to join them for a drink. You're already at the office, you're staying late, you're working, and the deadline for the budget is Friday. So today is Tuesday, Friday. So we have a few days to work on. We still have Wednesday and Thursday. And so this idea of going to meet up with their colleagues for drinks, you know, sounds pretty appealing. So I'm gonna grab my laser here. So let's break down each variable. So the expectancy. Now, if we have, let's say we're in a small company and there's only one or two other people working for this or working on this budget, and it could lead to promotion or raise, our expectancy is pretty high, because we know that if we're only competing against somebody else or we're kind of due for that promotion, we can have a high expectancy that this goal can happen for us. So we're pretty motivated when it comes to that. The value of this goal, getting a promotion or raise, is very clear. Making more money, getting a better job title, that gives us leverage to be able to work down the road. So that is a key thing that's really going to keep us motivated. Now, here is where we have impulsiveness coming in and delay. So impulsiveness, here's an opportunity where a text comes in, we answer it, we get distracted, and now there's an opportunity right now to go join our colleagues for a drink, and as opposed to working on the proposal that's due on Friday. Now, typically, let's just assume for this imaginary scenario that drinks is like 15 minutes away. It's basically a block or two away from the office. You can walk there and be there in 15 minutes. And so the gratification of going for drinks with your colleagues is 15 minutes away. The gratification of completing the deadline on the proposal and submitting it is on Friday. And even if you got it done Thursday night, like submitting it, like that's all in the future. So because that delay is further off and going for drinks is sooner, we're much more tempted to do things that are in our near-sighted future as opposed to things that are further off. And that's the delay variable. And so in this situation, if we choose to go for drinks, we're feeding that need to do something sooner, quicker, and we're putting off or procrastinating on the thing that really needs to be done, the thing that's going to give us the potential raise, potential more money, and we have to get this done at some point. And so this is how our motivation works. And we're always getting bombarded by different delays, different call to action, things that we could be doing that really hinder us from staying focused on what we need to do. And that's why it's so important to edge out those 4 hours a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, whatever it is, for your deep work, and then let the rest of life take suit after that. Whatever bombards, whatever happens, it happens. But know that these delays will zap us and pull us away from what we really need to do. And you have to understand that your motivation will be tested again and again in order to make that happen. If you have any questions on this, you can definitely email me, but hopefully I explained that pretty clearly to you. So I want to give you a little bit of guilt relief, because for anyone who was in school and wrote essays and thought they were the worst procrastinator, it turns out that essays are the worst for procrastination. And if we apply the procrastination equation to it, the reason being delaying, long deadlines. Typically an essay is assigned at the start of the semester and there's one due in the middle or at the end. So they're far off. So we have like a month, 2, 3 to get them done. So we put them off because the delay is so long. There's so many other things we can do before getting that essay done. Expectancy is low. The reality of essays is when you're in school, you're normally in several classes. So you have all these different essays going on at once. Grades are subjective. All you really know is that you need to get a passing grade to really move on into the next course. So there's not a lot of true value or expectancy for you because you don't expect a whole lot of it. The only thing that you really want is to pass and move on to the next course. So your expectancy is pretty low because it's not gonna, you don't expect to do too much for yourself. The value is low. It's grueling in nature. It takes lots of research, reading and writing. Some of the topics we don't like. So our personal value to this and commitment can be very low at times. And impulsiveness, when you're a student, there is 200 other things you can be doing rather than writing a paper. And this is why most essays get written in the last 24 or 48 hours, and it's just the reality of the situation. And the guy who wrote this book, Piers Steele, he's actually a Canadian guy, works at the University of Calgary. So he does a lot of studies, obviously, with students because he teaches them left and right. And he, in the book, said himself, like, essays are the worst form of procrastination. So this is like, if you felt that you were a bad student, it is just because if you look at the actual psychology behind what drives essay behavior and how we submit these papers, this is just the human condition. This is just how we're all wired. And so it's not something you have to feel guilty for. So hopefully you can rid yourself that story of being a procrastinator and you're the worst at writing papers. And there's a bit of guilt relief for this in you. So planning. Piers Steele, the author of the Procrastination Equation, says, proper planning is one of the best ways to combat impulsiveness, allowing you to transform distant deadlines into present day ones. And so we've talked about this. We've talked about breaking down our goals. You know, we have the big goal here. We reverse engineered it. We've broken it down with DISC. And now we know what we should be doing on a day-to-day basis. And he says this is one of the best ways to overcome impulsiveness, because when we have those constant distractions, what's going on, and a goal that's far in the future, if it feels unattainable or that it's going to take more work and energy, then we're going to do what stimulates us right away, whether that be drinks, watching Netflix, doing something else. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. But the key thing is to break things down into smaller chunks, and now we have a plan day to day of what we need to get done, and we get gratification making small progress towards our goals. So he's reinforcing things that we've covered in past modules. Now, one of the interesting things about his research is, so this is a chart, and so basically at the bottom is optimism. I'm gonna get my laser out again. And on one side, these are high possible tasks. So these are things that are easy to do, that we have a high possibility of, we believe we can complete them, we know we can get them done. On the other end are low tasks, tasks that we feel are harder, much more difficult to reach. Like if I said I wanted to write a New York Times selling novel this year, or let's say in 2017, that would be a lower task. Like my optimism, do I really believe I could do it in 2017? Like, I don't know a lot about writing right now. Like maybe 5 years from now when I build my podcast, my audience, like that seems more realistic. But in 2017, that's a lower task. My optimism is pretty low on that. And then on this y-axis, we have motivation. So this is low motivation and high motivation. And so you can see there's a direct correlation, basically. I'm going to click here, where tasks we deem impossible or lower, like me writing a novel to become a New York Times bestseller 27, my motivation for that would be low because I don't expect it to actually happen. Like I could say I'm going to try to write a New York Times bestselling novel in 2017, but my true expectancy of that happening and my motivation is not that high. So there's a fine point where we have what we deem as a challenging task for ourselves and a high expectancy that we'll get it done. And this is where we want to be with our goals. We want to be doing things that are challenging us, things that we believe we can get done, but they're challenging us to grow, move forward, because we're going to have higher motivation to get these things done. And this actually brings us to, if we go back to last week, Todd Herman, growth and confidence, right? If we overlap these two bubbles, we're talking about the wow mindset, and part of having the wow mindset is taking on these ideas like, wow, I can do this. You know, when I see results, I get motivated, and we start growing and we start becoming more confident, and this leads momentum, which is the opposite of being stuck, which is the owl brain of like where we don't feel like we're making any progress or moving forward at all. So going back to Piers Steele's slide, you can see how important it is that we find things that are challenging us. And this reinforces that wow brain where we see progress, where we're growing, we're getting more confident because we're doing new things and we're challenging ourselves to expand as opposed to just doing the exact same things and staying stuck in our ways. So the keys to succeeding with the procrastination equation are this. We need to increase our expectancy. We need to really believe that what we can do is going to happen. We want to decrease our impulsiveness. We've talked a fair bit about this. I'm not going to get into this anymore in the rest of the slides because we've talked about how to do deep work, how to turn off our cell phone, really go in and minimize all the distractions. So I don't think I need to get too much into this. And the last one is minimizing our delays. And how do we make sure that we bring our future goal back to the present? We've talked about deconstructing them and making sure we know what we're working on. So we're getting immediate gratification daily. At least we're making progress towards our goals and it feels like we're on our way to achieving our goals. And that's really embracing the wow mindset of like, wow, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I've achieved. This is what I've done. And that's going to help us to stay motivated and keep moving forward. So part 2. Motivation and momentum. So increasing our expectancy and combating the procrastination equation. So here's some fun facts about procrastinators that I learned from the book that I thought would just be good for you guys to know. Procrastinators lack confidence and optimism. Now this decreases your motivation, it makes it harder for you to focus and decreases your momentum, things that we don't want to happen. So when we procrastinate extensively, it's going to have a direct impact on our results. They have a failure mindset. By expecting to fail, we make failure a certainty because we never dig in and make an intensive effort. So if there's a part of you that doesn't really truly believe what's going on and you're kind of just going through the motions, like you really need to believe that you can get it done or else it's just not going to happen for you. You're just going to be digging yourself a hole and at some point or another you're going to give up and quit is what it comes down to, and failure is just inevitable for you. Procrastination is correlated with lower self-confidence, which isn't that surprising if you think about it because people that tend to put things off, they probably don't feel as confident for getting it done, directly connected to the procrastination equation. But they do have the same intentions. So procrastinators don't, like when you ask them how they're doing a test or when they're going to get their essay done, they have the exact same intentions as somebody else, but they just keep putting things off because they don't truly believe that they can get it done. So there's 5 ways to combat the procrastination equation. And these are things that I've come up with, also taken some from Piers Steele's book. There's success spirals, there's mental contrasting, there's embracing failure, there's accept that you're addicted to delay, and increasing willpower. And these are the 5 things we're going to get into the second part of this module, really break them down, things that have had an impact on me, and we'll go from there. So success spirals. What are success spirals? Now, a success spiral, this is an example that Piers Steele uses in his book, and he basically talks about the Polynesian explorers. And so here on the left-hand side, this catamaran, the Polynesians basically invented the catamaran, and what they did is they would use these boats to explore islands. And what they would do is they'd be on one island, they'd prepare all their provisions, everything they needed for the trip, they'd get their men on board, and they'd sail across to another island because they could see it from one island to another. And they'd get to that island, and as soon as they got there, they would look out in the distance and they could see another island. And basically, this is how the Polynesians, and there's a map here on the right, of all the islands they discovered using this technique. And there's a lot of little islands that you don't even see here, but that's basically how they were able to explore this part of the world and conquer all these islands, because they were able only to see the island in front of them. But when they got to that island, they could see the next island. And then got to that island, like, oh, there's another one. And so they kept doing this. And this is very similar to what we talked about in earlier modules about breaking down our goals. You know, we had the oil barrel example by Brian Tracy, where he talked about, you know, whatever your far distant goal is, make sure that we have the desert metaphor where we connect the oil barrels back to the present day to really make sure we understand what we need to do. And this is the same in success spiral, where if we understand what we need to get done today and we start moving for that, then we can move on to the future task in front of us, the island in front of you. And when we get to that island, then we see what we need to do next and really keep moving forward. So these success spirals build confidence and they build momentum. And that helps keep our motivation going, because when we're seeing these small wins, and I talked about earlier as being a key component of the course, when we see small wins, that reinforces that wow brain, that thing of like, wow, I see the progress that is happening now. And that's what we need. That's the reinforcement we need to keep going with our goals. Because if we don't get that positive feedback and create a positive feedback loop, we stop. We don't move forward with our goals any further. So keys to a success spiral. So Peter Steele talks about challenging this belief, and he brings up this idea, and I'm sure you guys have all heard it, where when a baby elephant is chained down at a young age, it's basically, you know, cemented in and it's can't go anywhere. But then as it gets older, they can just put it on like a loose little rope with a peg in the ground, and then it can easily break from the peg, but it doesn't do so because it's learned helplessness, that basically that it hasn't been able to move forward is what it comes down to. That's a terrible explanation. But anyway, the belief is that we're broken and tamed at some point. We don't realize how easily our potential can be regained if we only tried. And so really the key thing here is that we have this mindset that we're not necessarily able to, we've kind of been conditioned, learned helplessness, that things aren't working out for us, and we need to be able to challenge that, as what Peter Steele is saying. And so the step one of this is to think of an area of life you want to improve, and think about just what small improvement can you make past your current skill set. It's just getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, and then we start moving into that. Step two is, as you start to make these improvements, pay attention to the little victories and see how your skills are improving. And part three is keep breaking down smaller and smaller pieces and count your successes. And so what he's talking about here is the wow brain. Exactly what we talked about last week was looking at our progress, seeing our successes, the strides that we've made, what Todd Herman talked about, the momentum, the confidence, the motivation that we get to keep going. Because when we do that, then we can definitely keep moving forward. So this is just reinforcing that is what it comes down to, because as we see these small improvements and we keep breaking things down to smaller pieces, we expect that we can do them, we believe we can get them done, and we keep moving forward. He says a key component of keeping the success spirals going is having attainable goals. And so attainable goals is setting ongoing goals that you can achieve in your day-to-day life. We've talked about this, really breaking down your goals into incremental stages. Reflecting on the goals you've achieved. This keeps our motivation high. Taking responsibility. He says day-to-day life does not create easily structured goals for us to achieve. We don't create that series of goals because we have so many distractions. We have to go to our kids, we have to go shopping, we have to go work out, all these things. So if we want to see progress in the goals or in the project that we're working on, if we don't make it ourselves, where we deconstruct this and really know what we're working towards and what 5 goals we have to get done this week and what 5 we have to get done next week, we don't get that success happening is what happens, because we need to own that responsibility, because society's not going to create it for you. No one else is going to do it for you. We live in this bombardment of distraction stuff. So that's not going to happen from a social standpoint. So you are the person that has to make your goals attainable and make that happen for yourself. Personal triumphs, when you see little wins and successes, this really boosts your success. One thing that I want to share about this, some of you that knew me when I lived in Vancouver, you guys knew I would go on these hikes with these guys called Chasing Sunrise. And the way Chasing Sunrise works is we would get up at 2, 3 in the morning. We'd drive to a mountain, be there at 4 a.m. We'd hike up an hour and a half, 2 sometimes, and be up there before sunrise. And so there was something really powerful about getting up so early in the morning, hiking a mountain, and by the time 6 a.m. hit, or 5:30, whatever time the sun was rising, we would be on top of that mountain to see the sunrise go up. And as you came down, I can personally tell you, it was one of the most powerful feelings, like, if I can do that before the sun has already risen, like, what else can I do? And those days you just feel you empowered. You just feel like you could take on the world and do anything you need to. And that's one of the big MOs of Chasing Sunrise, is just like, you know, if we can do this, what else can we do? And so that's what Peter Steele is talking about here. Our own personal triumphs, and they don't have to be connected to our goals, and say other wins in parts of our life help boost that confidence, because we start believing in ourselves. And success stories. So even hearing other people have succeeded, people close to us in our lives, sometimes watching a movie, we get that zap of motivation when we hear really inspirational stories. That's why TED Talks are great. That's why people listen to podcasts, because they get inspired from hearing other people's stories. And so because we see that another person just like us did it, and so we're like, well, so can I. And that increases our expectancy because we see somebody in similar shoes or a similar situation achieving the goal that we wanted to, and that helps us to move forward. And again, I've been connecting that back to the procrastination equation. It's about raising our expectancy and believing that we can get these things done. And it's growing us, stretching us, moving us forward. Now, the second thing, and this is something that's been huge for me, is mental contrasting. So Piers Seals talks about this in the book, where we need to be able to contrast about where we are to where we want to go. And this is a concept by Gabrielle Oettingen, I butchered her name, but as, again, based on university research, the paper is called Mental Contrasting and Goal Commitment, the Mediating Role of Energization. And basically mental contrasting is that we look at our current situation against the ideal situation, and we're anticipating setbacks. So when something pops up for us, we're not dumbfounded by it. And I'm actually gonna give you an exercise that we talk about this, where we're gonna anticipate all the things that can go wrong, what we can expect on our journey, because if we don't have a realistic expectation of what's gonna happen, when we have a setback hit us, then our expectancy goes down. So we wanna prepare for anything that can be a speed bump, a hindrance on our plan, because that's gonna give us, when we get to that point and we get pushed back, we're already prepared for that setback. We already have a plan, we know what we're gonna do. So when it hits us, we're not fazed by it one little bit. So mental contrasting has been found to improve academic performance, better SAT scores, higher grades, improved health. People that did this got into better shape, they lost more weight, they minimized how much unhealthy snacking they were doing, all those things. This actually increased help-seeking behavior and giving behavior to help others, and increase the likelihood of you taking steps to reduce cigarette consumption. This is all from the study they did at the university, things that they found mental contrasting benefited people with. So the exercise that I want you to do with mental contrasting is write down or think about aspects that are positive with your goal. So think about all the positive impacts that's going to impact you. If you want to, I'm going to use losing weight because it's an easy one. If you want to lose weight, then it's like think about how you're going to look in your skinny jeans, or how you're going to feel with that new body, all these things that you want in relationship to your goal. Now, you're going to hone in on the most positive aspects of this goal. So whether it be one big impact or a few smaller ones, like even losing weight, like you can be living a longer life, keeping up with your grandkids, just having more energy. There's so many aspects to getting into better shape that impacts you, makes it more positive for you, that it's not just about looking good per se. So focus on those positive impacts, whether it's one large one or a few small ones. Then I want you to write down several obstacles that will come up from preventing your goal. So if it's losing weight, it's going to be obviously the temptation to give in to bad food, eating things that are not good for you, skipping workouts, doing things that are not going to be in line with your goal, all those things. And if you can focus in on those, that's going to help you to anticipate some of the setbacks you're going to have. And same thing, pick one large obstacle or a few several obstacles in the second part of this question and anticipate those. What do they look like? What time do they come up for you? When can you expect them? When is the most likely time it's going to happen for you? All these things, and if you can do that, then you're going to be able to start moving forward. So 3, fear holds us back. And so this is something that had a profound impact on me, very similar to mental contrasting, but came through Tim Ferriss, and it's more about our deepest fear and really what is preventing you from moving forward and taking action in your life. And so what Tim Ferriss says is people fail to reach their goals because they're poorly defined. People fail to overcome fear because it's poorly defined. And I truly believe that where fear is this nebulous thing where we don't give it enough reality, like it's just so easy to imagine things in our head, but the odds of them happening in real life is very slim. And so if we define fear, if we really break it down and dissect it and look at it and make it real, we see it's not as bad as we truly expect it to be. And so Tim Ferriss' definition of fear is an irreversible negative outcome. And so this is really important to stress because most people fear, there's some things we can fear, but the reality is a lot of these things are changeable. We can reverse them. It's like if I choose to lose weight and I go down to 150 and then I fear that I'm going to gain another 25 pounds, that's fine because I can go back down and lose that weight. But the way he wants you to look at fear is what is something permanent, something that's not going to, like if you did this, that you won't be able to change it or go back. And once we start looking at fear this way, we realize that 99% of the things in life are not permanent. We can change them, we can shift them. And so the things we fear are very temporary in nature, and they're holding us back, even though we could change them down the road if we really needed to. So he loves Stoicism. He talked about Seneca a lot, and this is a quote from Seneca: "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And he has this assignment of, Seneca always said, like, spend a week poor and see what your worst case scenario actually looks like. And when you do that, and I've done this, you realize, like, yeah, you eat the lowest food, you don't dress very well, but the thing you fear when you're at the bottom is not that bad. Like, and if this is all that you're fearing, you're like, well, and I can live through this, then it gives you that motivation and hope to start moving forward, because your worst case scenario isn't that bad. And so even if you hit rock bottom per se, things are still going to be okay. It's never going to get to that extreme dire situation that we fear. Catastrophe is what it is. And so there's another guy I want to bring up here in terms of failure, because he's really point on. Peter Branton, he was the CEO of Liberty Media. He innovated channels. Most of you will probably never know him, but he was one in the 80s and 90s. Channels like Fox News, Discovery Channel, QVC, which is huge in the States, a shopping channel, billions of dollars of revenue through that, and BET networks. So he was very diverse. He brought different channels to life. Obviously now Netflix is a different ballgame, but he was in the cable game at the right time, late 80s, early 90s, and he brought a lot of these channels to life, invested in them, was an innovator, and really saw these opportunities that people at the time weren't quite really seeing. And so one of his, and Tuan, I want to say his memoir is amazing for dads. This is a great book, and you guys should really read it. So one of Peter's philosophy was that he was a professional skier, and so a lot of people don't know this about him because his professional life really and his business took off. But before that, he was a professional skier, and he was known for doing these dangerous jumps in the Rockies. And his philosophy was really interesting, and he said, no one gets hurt in the air. You only get hurt in the landing. And so if you work on the landing, it makes the takeoff easier. And that was his entire philosophy. And he was known for being reckless and spontaneous and doing all these crazy things. But really that was an image and a facade that he had, because he practiced landing. He knew the terrain. And that was his way of having the confidence to take off. Because most people, like you said, fear taking off. But if you know the landing, if you know how you're going to fall or where you need to land, then you're better off. And he kept doing this even on into later on when he was doing these deals in business and TV, where he was always kind of this wild, reckless person, but that was his facade. That was kind of like his poker face. But deep down, he was planned and calculated, and he knew what was going on at all times. And so, and there was that vision that, like, if you land and fail, it's like, it's just being aware that it's not going to be that bad. And so, but he planned that. He anticipated those failures, those landings, and by knowing that, he was able to have a lot of confidence to really work through deals and acquisitions. So when we're fearful, we get held back, and this minimizes our expectancy. I'll get my laser here again, right? Fear is what holds back. If we don't expect something to happen, or we don't know how much value it's going to bring, it zaps our motivation. So we need to be able to combat fear. We really need to go after it, because fear can be one of the biggest things that holds us up from moving forward with our goals. And it certainly has been for me. For years, I was not building a blog. I was not building a podcast. I was not coaching people or creating a beta course, because for me, I was so fearful of, like, I can't do this. No one's going to listen. There were so many doubts and fears that lived in my head. So we need to be able to learn how to combat our fears, because that's the way we're going to be able to move through with our goals. So the fear exercise, this is from Tim Ferriss. 1, define your nightmare. What is the absolute worst case scenario that can happen? Make this as real as possible. So we're going to paint out what is the worst thing that can happen to you. 2, now imagine what you can do to prevent that worst case scenario from happening. And when you do that, you're going to paint out a picture of, like, okay, if this happens, then how can I combat it? What can I do to prevent that? And then 3, assuming that the worst case scenario has come true, what can you do to reverse the impact or minimize the damage from the scenario? And I've done this exercise 2 or 3 times now, and every time it shows you how much power you have when you get into these worst case scenarios, where you realize how much leverage you have and what you can do to really start moving through it. And so when you realize that fear is not as bad of a component as you really feel it is, then it gives you confidence to start moving forward. So there's 2 bonus questions. What are other outcomes or benefits that are more possible scenarios that could happen? And what can you do to minimize the chances of more possible negative outcomes from occurring? 4, accept that you're addicted to delay. And so this comes from Piers Steele's, and when we look at delay in the procrastination equation, it's really about acknowledging that we're gonna be delayed again and again. And so he says admitting gives us power. And this goes back to Alcoholics Anonymous, where if we admit we are powerless over alcohol, there's actually a great deal of power in saying like, oh, I don't have control over my addiction to being an alcoholic. Acknowledging that one collapse can lead to an explosion. So if we say we're going to watch a Netflix episode and we're working on our goal and our goals, you know, a week away, if we say we can watch one Netflix episode, again, that delay is right away. We can start getting into that in 5-10 minutes, and then we know we're gonna get gratification from watching that episode sooner rather than working on the project that's due off on the Friday or down the road. And so we have this ability, when we do this, that one episode can lead to 2, 3, 4, and it snowballs is what it comes down to. And so when we start getting to delay games, it becomes easy to get into a spiral where we just get lost from our track from the project that we have to do. And acknowledge we justify to cheat. So we always say we're only gonna watch one Netflix episode. And before you know it, it is 2. So we always have this belief that we're only gonna do this one or just for a short little period of time, but that's a fallacy. And he says, Piers Steele says, by saying that, knowing that one is not really gonna be one, it again gives us power. It's being realistic, it's being honest with ourselves, because then we really know what to expect. And like that mental contrasting exercise, it's like when we really know what to expect with our goals, where we're heading, what we can anticipate as setbacks, that really gives the strength to start moving forward. Because when we hit those setbacks, we don't beat ourselves up for it. We don't get into the owl brain and really start being negative in our inner critic, because we don't want to run into that. So really acknowledging these factors that we are going to hit delays and we're going to be tempted to is key to moving forward with them. So, and the reason why we have the delays is because our limbic system is responsible for the now. And this is basically a reptilian brain, the brain that says, you know, what can I eat right now? What can I fuck right now? Will it kill me? It's very primal, it's very primitive, but it is responds to what's going on around us, and it wants to be stimulated right away. It's also responsible for impulsiveness and really like those Facebook notifications. We get the dopamine when we get on there and start chatting to somebody. It's the now brain that really prevents us from being more future oriented. And so there's a scenario that was proposed in the book where if we gave our limbic brain $1 million paycheck, it would take that versus $5,000 a month for the rest of our life. Our prefrontal cortex, our rational brain, would definitely take the monthly payments of $5,000, but our limbic system is very much now, and that's a huge part of our brain. And one thing that is in the Willpower book that I was reading by Kelly McGowan is that she says that with evolution, we don't get to erase parts of our brains that are no longer serving us. So we have this reptilian brain that, yeah, was vital to us 100,000 years ago, but now it might be circumventing us and preventing us from being successful, like being so addicted to these impulsions that we have in our daily society. But we can't erase that. We're not a computer. We can just like install the latest Windows or operating system and forget about the DOS system that was up in the 70s and 80s. That's not how the human brain works. So we have the DOS system, we have Windows 95, we have Windows Vista, and we have the latest version of Windows, and that's how we operate. We have all these evolutions stacked on top of us. So by having more awareness of how these brains operate and how they can compromise our strategies and what we're trying to achieve, it helps us to be more aware and really not beat ourselves up nearly as much. So the limbic system is highly associated with procrastination. And if we know this, how can we fight back to this hardwiring? What can we do? So here's the procrastination exercise that I want you to do. I want you to identify ways that you typically procrastinate and reflect honestly on these experiences. There's typical patterns that people run again and again. And so when we understand these patterns, we can start looking about what really is triggering them. And that's the second question. Why do you procrastinate? Do you need a break? Is there something else that you want? Do you not know what you need to do next? Figure out why it is that you procrastinate. There's typically a reason deeper than what we go do. Like if we go snack and need food, it's typically not because we're hungry. We procrastinate because there's something else at play. So identify the reasons, what's at play for you of why you tend to procrastinate. What measures can you put in place to prevent yourself from procrastinating in the future? So once we know your list of 3 or 4 top things that are holding you back, write them out, put them beside your computer, wherever you do your work, and what can you do to prevent these? Knowing that these are your weak points, that this is your kryptonite, how can you prevent it? And then 4, create a disaster response plan. So when you do one of these things, you know, what can you do when you start seeing yourself going that spiral where you're starting to procrastinate and you're being inefficient? Can you go for a walk? Can you do some deep breathing? Do you want to go for do you want to do some meditation? Whatever that is for you, figure out how you can get back into the state you need to be. And when I grew up playing tennis, right, one of the common things that you do is you develop rituals. And so really think about how you can develop a ritual when you get out of your groove to get back into it. In tennis, when you played a long tennis point, sometimes you won it, sometimes you lost it. When you lost it, there'd be a lot of emotion, and you'd want to, sometimes I'd freak out, swear, yell, throw my racket, for those of you that knew how I played tennis. But what comes down to it is that when you go back to the next point, you have to be mentally prepared. And so when you're the server, in tennis what you do, you have this ritual of bouncing the ball 3, 4, 5 times, because that helps you get into a state of mind of where you need to be to basically let go of the past, whatever happened, and start focusing on the next point. Because it doesn't matter how intense the last point was or how you lost it. The most important thing is that you had to play the next point, because your match depended on the following points and not the points that had already been played. And that's a key thing. When we procrastinate, it feels like we're going to spiral and we'll never get back to our goals. But if we can stop that procrastination and really circumvent it right there in that moment, then we can start moving forward with our goals again. And so the more we can be aware of that and how we can, when we get into that moment, have a game plan of what we want to do to really make ourselves get back on track, that's how we can start moving forward. And play around different things. What I've found with this is that you have different ideas, but certain things will work some days, certain things will work other days, but it's just really trying to maximize the amount of time we spend doing deep work. 5, willpower. Willpower is something I wanted to throw in because it's so highly connected to impulsion, delaying gratification, and all those things. And so the important thing that you need to know about willpower, it's like a battery. We only have so much of it in a day. So we wake up in the morning, our willpower is full. This is why it's best to do your goals first thing in the morning, where you really have, you know, your full willpower. You're less likely to procrastinate. You can minimize all those distractions. Because if you leave it for 7 p.m. at night, then it's just harder. Every decision is harder. It takes more energy. We just don't have as much time or as much energy, I keep saying that word, to really be able to make the decision that we need to and be able to do what we have to do with our goals. So if we look at willpower, there are 3 types of willpower. The one that we know the most is I won't willpower. So this is what I won't eat that, I won't do this. And it's really about pushing ourselves back. But there's 2 other willpowers that most people don't realize. And this is the I will. So I will get into better shape. That is another willpower where we're forcing ourselves to go do something that might not be necessarily in our comfort zone or we're used to. But the most important one is I want. And the I want willpower is the long-term vision of who we want to be. So going back into getting into better shape that is one of the I want is the most powerful willpower of them all, because if you see that future version of yourself, the shape you want to be in, or the public speaking you want to be doing, on the stage you want to be, or the millionaire, whatever it is, that's going to help you move towards that, because it's that long-term vision that helps to give you the strength to decline certain offers in the moment of like, oh, I won't eat this cookie, or I won't do that, because we have that long-term vision of where we want to go. So if we know that the I want is the most important willpower that keeps us aligned, move this down a little bit. It's important because it connects us to our long-term vision. It allows us to fight back to that impulse in the moment, which I just talked about. It's critical because the why. We really need to have that deep down connection of why we're doing this, why this is important to us. Because if we know that, then it's easier to say no to certain things in the moment and really be strong with our confidence and what we want to stand up for. And visualization. If we have that vision in the future of what we expect, this increases the likelihood that we'll stay away from our cravings and impulses. And this is where mental contrasting comes in. If we really know how to expect or anticipate the things that are going to be failures or pain points in the future, things that can stumble us, be a block, then we're more likely to stick with our willpower because we're expecting those things and we know how to prepare for them. And so one fun fact on willpower, it is actually the single highest determinant of human potential. I did not know this going into it, but basically people that have stronger willpower are happier, healthier, more satisfied relationships last longer, they make more money, further in careers, better able to manage stress, deal with conflict, overcome adversity. I've just been getting into this willpower book that I will probably get into some more in the next module. There's a lot of stuff in the module that I already have and that I want to keep. So I'm not sure if there's gonna be space for the willpower. That's why I wanted to throw it in here, because I think it's a key component, understanding that if you think that you can control everything, you know, you only have so much willpower in a day to really be able to do stuff. And so it's about being realistic with yourself, that you can only force and muster up so much energy to achieve your goals. And when you do procrastinate or you kind of give in, you know, what's at play here is the key thing. So willpower is a huge thing. And basically the book talks about if you can develop one thing, developing willpower is the utmost thing, because it's going to have a huge impact on the rest aspects of your life. So quickly, recap of the exercises. I really feel like I flew through this module, was talking really fast. If you feel so, give me that feedback. But I knew there's a lot of slides and I wanted to get through them. So mental contrasting exercise, I will email you guys all these so you will have them, you can go through them. I want you to do that. The fear exercise, I want you to do that. So basically the best would probably be block off 3 30-minute sessions or an hour session and get these all done. Whatever's gonna work for you, make them happen. And the last one is the procrastination exercise. Become aware of the different ways that you can add, you know, expectancy, be clear on your goals. The mental contrasting is key. The fear is key. Really understanding what's going to hold you up going forward potentially and how to combat that. And procrastination, when you get into that dip, that rut, things that want to pull your attention away, what can you do to prepare for that and really anticipate those setbacks? That wraps it up for us. These are the resources for you, 4 books, a bunch of online stuff. So feel free to check any of that stuff out. And that is it for today. Thank you for checking out this module. If you have any questions on the exercises, do let me know. And I may be emailing you a survey this week. I talked to a few people and they said that it'd be best to kind of do a survey for the first 3 modules and the last 3. I know it's 5 already, but I might get you to, I probably will get you to fill out a survey for the first 3 modules, and then for the last 3 to kind of give you more feedback on the beta side of the course. And that way it's not going to be all packaged into one, and you'll be a little bit more clear on what was the first 3 modules than you would be if we go through the whole course right away. So look out for that, and I will get that to you. And that is it for today. So thank you. Email me with any questions or send me a text or Facebook message, and I will definitely get back to you. Bye-bye.